begin, I've made a mixture of about 1.5 teaspoons of salt, about a teaspoon of pepper, some crushed rosemary, about a tablespoon and a half, and about a tablespoon and a half of crushed dried thyme. None of this stuff is fresh right here. That will cover the duck breast. As you can see, I scored the back so that I can get some of the mixture there. And I've also seasoned with olive oil and the other portion of the mixture, about 2 tablespoons of that, into this, where I'll roast it for 375 degrees, about 30-40 minutes. I'll do that first. Then I'll start preparing my blueberry sauce, which you have right here. We have my sugar, water, diced jalapeno, some vegetable oil. In that case, I use canola oil, some aged balsamic vinegar, and some apple juice. And of course, I got about 2 cups of blueberries here. That'll make up my sauce. Over here, you see what I'm going to put together with the bok choy, with shiitake mushrooms, shallots, and pancetta. I'll go through a reduction first, sweat down my bok choy and shallots, and then I'll take all of that out, and then I'll reduce, sweat down the bok choy until it's ready, and then I'll reintroduce the ingredients. And once I'm finished with all of that and I got my sauce ready, my potatoes should be ready, then I'll start pan-searing my duck breast. And I'll pan-sear it this side first. I'll cook it at a high heat, probably about a medium high, and make sure it cooks for about 5 minutes so I can get some nice crisp and crust on that duck. Now, the good thing about duck is you can do a medium rare like you would do a tenderloin, because as you know, this is not necessarily poultry, it's actually game, so you won't have to worry about the salmonella. So I try to cook these at a medium rare. Many suggest about an internal temperature of about 160 degrees. That may make it a little tough. So just kind of judge it by eyeball and look at whether it's medium rare or not. I like to put a thermometer in the middle. Okay, we're going to start off with roasting our purple potatoes. As you can see here, I have a mixture of extra virgin olive oil. I have about 2 tablespoons of that. And I have 2 tablespoons of our salt, pepper, rosemary, and thyme mixture. I'm just going to put this in the oven. As you can see, I have it set for 375 degrees. And I'm going to cook it for 40 minutes. While I do that, I'll then go on to preparing my reduction, my blueberry reduction. I'll add my 2 cups of blueberries, some apple juice, some water. The apple juice, about a half a cup of water, about a half a cup of sugar, white sugar, and then I put 1 jalapeno. And I don't use all of the seeds because the seeds will generate the heat. So what I try to do is I take out about a 1/4 teaspoon of the seeds and kind of add that in there, depending on how much heat you'd like to get. Now let me just go ahead and finger the rest of these into the bowl, and I'll set it so I can bring this to a boil. And what I'm trying to do is bring it to a boil and have it reduce down to a syrup. So this stuff will take very well. Let me get my little mixing spoon here, and we'll go right ahead. I think I'm going to turn it to the back burner. We'll get a little bit more heat on that, and this way we can let it boil up, let it come to a boil, and then I'll let it cook down for about 2 minutes. Okay? And as you can see, you have your basic apple juice, sugar, water, and freshly diced jalapeno peppers. So this kind of starts my first 2 phases of the process. The next thing I'm going to do is I'll prepare myself for the bok choy. I started out with about a half a cup of finely diced pancetta. It's really an Italian bacon. So I'll cook that down, let it brown real good. I'll let it start producing its own little fat so that I can render that fat and start cooking my, I'll pull that off once I get it completely cooked, and then I'll add the shiitake mushrooms that I have over here. I have about four ounces of shiitake mushrooms, and I have about 6 small shallots that I dice kind of on the bias, just so it can have a little bit more texture. It'll sweat down real good and add a nice little visual dimension to the plate. And then when I heat up this bok choy here, what I try to do is heat it so that I can get some tenderness in the whitey meat of the bok choy. The green parts take a lot less to cook, so I try to segregate them. It's just my style, my preference. I segregate the white parts because they take a little bit longer, and I let those sweat down in the mixture before adding the other things. So we'll get back to that. I just wanted to get you on tune with how things are working with that. And as you can see, in my other pan with my blueberry reduction, I'm starting to get a little boil on that. So we'll let that do its thing for a while, and then we'll come back to it, and we'll have us a nice, elegant 5-7 star. Let's give it 7 stars because this is a Frankie J production, a romantic Cuisinier production. So we don't do anything less than 7 stars, okay? Because of course, if it's our world, we have more stars in it, okay? But we're gonna cook this down. Make sure that the oil is rendering, that the fat is being rendered properly. And as you can see, it looks really good. And that's the key to fine cooking. You want to make sure your ingredients are of the highest quality. Because of course, you're not cheating anybody but yourself and your loved ones, because you're doing this for your sweetie, I'm sure, and for the family members that you love, okay? So you got to make sure that there's love in your choices and there's love in your presentation, okay? So we're slowly getting there. We'll take a break and we'll come back. Okay, as you can see, the reduction is starting to come down a little bit, starting to take effect. And now we've added the shallots and the shiitake mushroom into the mixture. What I'm doing now, and I took all of the pancetta out. I'm draining that on a paper towel. I'm just trying to sweat these down until they become a little bit wilted. I used the rest of the fat that was rendered from the pancetta to kind of cook this stuff. And all of this pan pot stickings will be great. Get all of that texture onto the pancetta so you get that wonderful flavor. I wish you could smell this aroma here. Unfortunately, we don't have smell-o-vision yet, but I can assure you this stuff smells delectable. I'd use other words, but this is actually a G-rated presentation. Okay, now that I scraped everything off, I took the shiitake mushroom and the shallots, and I cooked them down. I'm just letting them drain there along with the pancetta. As you see there's my bok choy. I'm just making sure that the pan is very hot. And once it's very hot, as it is right now, just trying to loosen up some of that fat off the bottom. It helps, but the bok choy, since it has a little bit of water content, it will help in that process. Now I'm getting ready. And let that sweat down. It'll reduce very, very quickly. I'll mix it up a little bit. Could have used a bigger saucepan, but that'll work. Once it starts sweating down a bit. And then I'll be good to go. I want to show you before I go on to another segment how this stuff is starting to reduce down. We're starting to see a little reduction. I'll just let that simmer while I'm cooking this. And then as you can see, my potatoes are about 20 minutes in. I have about 20 more minutes. So all this stuff is going to be well timed. Once I get it sweated down, I'm going to reintroduce all the ingredients together, and then I'm going to take it off the heat so that when it's ready for plating and everything. Okay, thank you. As you can see, I sweated it down until the white parts were a little tender and the green is wilted. So now I'm going to reintroduce the other ingredients such as the shallots and the mushrooms, shiitake mushrooms. I'll just put it all in here, making sure I don't waste any of it and I get it all in this bowl. Then I'll also reintroduce the pancetta that I put to the side and drain. And then mix that mixture up in this bowl. And once I get it mixed up, I'll just let it sit to the side and wait for my preparation of the duck breast. And hopefully, as you can see, I'm about 13 minutes out from my potatoes being completely cooked. So everything is well timed, and that's the key to good fine dining. Fine dining is a combination of a little bit of offensive strategy, which makes me a shoo-in for this type of thing, being that I was an infantry airborne ranger for 20 years in the military. And that creative thing, I happen to be a very creative person, so this kind of takes into consideration those types of things and the romanticism that requires you to go into great lengths to please those around you. So here we go. We're gonna go ahead and let this thing sit on the side of the pan. I'm gonna cover it, and I'm gonna sit at the side, turn off the heat. Matter of fact, I may keep the heat on, and I'm just gonna sit this to the side on my trivet and save that particular heat over here to fry, to cook my. I have a little bit of oil, vegetable oil. I use canola oil, about 2 tablespoons. And I'm gonna let that stuff heat up real good. And I'll let that heat up before I throw in I'm gonna cover this. Before I throw in the butter. The butter will help add a little other textural dimension it adds that crispness to the crust of the fat of the duck fat. That's what's so beautiful about the duck breast. The duck has that extra piece of fat because it's out there in the wild and it swims. That fat helps it keep warm and helps it maintain its buoyancy, which really does a great job for us because it adds a very complex flavor that doesn't necessarily exist for your typical poultry. So you get a piece of poultry that's nice and very tender, but it gives the look and the flavor of something as complex as a tenderloin. You have that tenderness as well. Okay, it appears that my oil is pretty high. I got it at a medium-high heat. I'm going to throw in my butter, and then once I do that, I'll be ready to put that piece of meat right on top of that butter, and it'll do its thing. Here we go. You're gonna let that cook, man. Let it do its thing for about 5 minutes, and I'll get right back to you when it's done. And then we'll go from there. We'll go into our plating portion of the meal. As you can see, I generously put some of the seasoning mixture on top of that. And then I'll show you how some great plating techniques that I've used. I always use the rule of 3s. As a speech professor, I learned that was useful in crafting great speech, coming up with good points. It also reflects well in the art of dressing, in the art of decorating, and also in the art of cooking. Because cooking is not just eating the meal. It's experiencing the meal on a sensory level, on 3 different levels: sight, sound, taste. Everything is being satiated by a well-prepared meal, and hopefully we'll be able to demonstrate that for you today. Okay, as you can see, we've scored it up pretty good. We're gonna make sure, turn it over to the other side and let that cook until the internal temperature is about 160 degrees. The reduction is doing well. It's slowly rendering. Got it up to an internal temperature of, let me see what that is, and then I'm gonna let it rest. The recipe calls for about 170, but 170 will really make it well done. I want to have it probably a little less than 170. I'm going to settle in for something around probably 140, 150. If I can get up to 140, 150, it looks like we're getting there. Actually, we're at 140. So I'm going to take it at 140 and I'm going to let it rest here for about 10 minutes. And while it's resting, I'm going to cover it with some aluminum foil. And then we'll go ahead and continue on with the reduction here. As you can see, we'll have our bok choy over here, still setting, still heated up pretty good because I have it covered. And then the last step I'm going to do is I'm going to take out these potatoes that I have roasting here at the appropriate temperature, and it should just be a little tender to the touch. You can kind of see from there it's still got that tenderness, just about perfect, just the way we want it. I like it just a hair al dente so we can maintain some of the flavoring and some of the nutritional value of the potatoes. So I keep the skins on because that adds to that dimension of the cooking process. Okay, next step I'll be taking you through will be the plating. So stay tuned for that, and I'll show you some great techniques to make not only have a delectable meal, but something that actually looks good. I've let it rest for about 5 minutes. Now I'm going to cut it so that we can really get a look at the flavors that are coming out there. As you can see, it still has a little bit of red there, and we've got that medium rare texture, so it's right where we want it. I'm cutting it nicely on the bias, and you could see the beauty of this meat here. It's really a delectable piece of cut of meat. Wild, gamey, but yet at the same time has a very delectable flavor. So that internal temperature of about 140, as you can see, was just about perfect. Sometimes you get these recipes, you gotta own it. You gotta make it your own because they're just a general rule. So once you get the idea of what you like, medium rare, then you can adjust the temperatures. You know, those are rules to go by. You know what I mean? They're guys. As long as you don't violate any principles, the techniques are going to be sound. So I'm going to let this sit here for a second, and then I'm going to make a decision as to how I'm going to plate this. Let me start off, I'm going to let this sit here right here. Let me start off with my plating process with the bok choy. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to take a little bit of bok choy. I'm going to try to place it center mass on this beginning here of my plating piece. So I'm going to stack it up pretty good, making sure I got a little bit of green, a little bit of everything on here. So that looks about right, okay? I like to have it textured and laid out on that bias so that both plates will get a nice little decorative flow. One of the things that you always want to make sure you do when you put together your plating is you constantly make your adjustments so that it looks good. I'm gonna plate the other portions of it, such as the meat. So give me a second here. I'm gonna put this meat on here. But before I do that, I like to always adjust, clean off my plate, make sure everything is perfectly laid out here, cleaned out. Okay, now I'm gonna lay this meat across. Give myself about 4 or 5 slices here. As you can see, that looks good. And then I'm gonna take another 4 or 5 slices here. And I'm gonna place this right over here. Okay, so I have that. I always like to clean my plate. Okay, now I'm gonna put my purple potatoes center mass. So give me a second here. Okay, I'm gonna get about 3 or 4. Always try to maintain 3 to 5 rule of thumb. Okay, always get that rule of 3. Usually odd numbers really visually impact what it is that we do. It's a really unique thing. It goes back to the days of Aristotle when they came up with the rule of 3. It's always a little bit more impactful, more exciting, and more diverse about how we cook and blend things together. I'm going to then, just kind of for decorative purposes, I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit of this rosemary, since we have some rosemary in there. I'm gonna dress it up with a little bit of rosemary prior to, but before I do that, I'm gonna take a little bit of my reduction sauce. I'm gonna take a little bit of my reduction sauce and kind of gracefully dollop it over my meat. Okay, there we go. We got that reduction sauce. Oh, this stuff is so delectable. I wish you could smell it. The blueberries have just really opened up to really expose themselves in such the most perfect way. Oh man, it's like they just want to honor the plate with their presence, and they're doing such a wonderful job of doing that. So here we have that portion. Now we're gonna go ahead and put a piece of this this rosemary here. Put it right there. It'll give it a little visual texture. Ah, perfect. Now what we have here, I'm going to put it over on the plating section here of the table. So now we have a complete presentation of pan-seared duck breast with a blueberry sauce, served with purple potatoes, roasted purple potatoes, and bok choy, shiitake mushrooms, shallots, and pancetta. A very high quality meal. As I said, it's a 7 on a scale of 5. But we always go a little higher here at the Romantic Cuisinier. Look forward to our next meals. We'll be posting regularly, and you can tap in and join our brand that's coming in the future. Be well, eat well, do well, and enjoy life.